We will begin. Aloha mai kako. Good morning, everyone. This is the November 7th, 2024 Land Use Commission meeting. This is a hybrid meeting, which means some of our participants are in person and some are participating via Zoom. It is physically located at the Leopapa a Kamehameha State Office Tower at 235 South Beretania Street, room 405 in Honolulu, Hawaii, 96813. And this meeting is open to the public. All court reporting transcriptions are being done from this Zoom meeting and a recording of the Zoom meeting. All meeting participants, attention, I would like to stress the importance of speaking slowly, clearly, and directly into your microphone. Before speaking each time, please state your name and identify yourself for the record. This is a hybrid meeting, and please be aware that all meeting participants are being recorded on the digital record by Zoom, which will be posted on YouTube and also be used for court reporting purposes. Your continued participation is your implied consent to be part of the public record of this event. And if you do not wish to be part of the public record, you should exit the meeting at this time. Also, please note that due to matters entirely outside of our control, occasional disruptions to connectivity may occur for one or more members of the meeting at any given time. If such disruptions occur, please be patient as we try to restore the audiovisual signals to effectively conduct our business today. Please note that the Q&A feature on Zoom will only be monitored for signing up or public testimony. All other communications will not be addressed or part of the meeting record. Communications can be mailed to our office at dbed.luc.web@hawaii.gov. And let me say again that since I am participating via Zoom, I may not be able to identify a participant who wishes to be called upon. So I've asked for the assistance of Ms. Kwan to identify such persons when they want to speak. And Ms. Kwan, let me implore you to interrupt me at your option whenever that occurs. I'll be taking breaks from time to time, nominally 5 minutes every hour. Today we have a hard stop at 12:30 because several commissioners need to depart. So we'll have to proceed on an expedited basis, and we will not be taking a lunch break. My name is Dan Giovanni, and I have the pleasure to serve as LUC Chair. And we currently have 9 seated commissioners, all of which are participating today. Michael Yamani from Kauai is in attendance. Commissioner Oʻahu from Maui is joining by Zoom. Commissioners Carr Smith and Miyasato from Hawaii Island are in person. Commissioner Mel Kahele and Brian Lee from Oʻahu are in person. Commissioner Kamakea Ohelo is joining by Zoom. And Commissioner Hayashida is joining in person. Also in attendance today are the LUC Executive Officer Daniel Orendanker, Chief Planner Scott Derrickson, Staff Planner Martina Segura, and Chief Clerk Ariana Kwan, all of which are in attendance in person. And joining us by Zoom is Deputy Attorney General Miranda Steed. Again, court reporting transcriptions are being done from this Zoom recording. Our next order of business is approval of minutes from the meeting of October 9 and 10, 2024. Ms. Kwan, has there been any written testimony submitted on the minutes?
No, Mr. Chair.
Are there any members of the public who wish to sign up to testify on the minutes? Excuse me, Ms. Kwan?
No written testimony and no oral testimony on the minutes.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, are there any corrections or comments on the minutes? If not, is there a motion to adopt the minutes from October 9 and 10, 2024?
Commissioner Miles Miyasato raised his hand.
Mr. Miyasato?
I'll be recusing myself from October 9th and 10th minutes. I was not present.
Very well. Any other corrections or comments? Do I have a motion to adopt the minutes from October 9th?
Chair,
Who's that?
Commissioner Yamani, move to approve, adopt the minutes.
So move, Commissioner
Second.
Yamani. Second.
Hello. Second.
Hale, second. All in favor of adoption of the minutes? Since this is the first vote of the day, we will do it by roll call. So may I call upon, excuse me, Executive Officer, to take a roll call vote on this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Am I on?
I hope
Thanks.
so.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. The motion is to approve the minutes. Commissioner Yamani. Aye. Commissioner Kamakeo, hello.
Aye.
Commissioner Carr Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Hayashida.
Aye.
Commissioner Kahele.
Aye.
Commissioner Lee. Aye. Commissioner Miyasato is excused. Commissioner Uu
Aye.
and Chair Giovanni.
Aye, thank you.
And passes unanimously.
Thank you. Mr. Orndaker, will you now present the tentative meeting schedule going forward?
Chair. So I'd like to go into an executive session to consult with our legal counsel on questions and issues pertaining to the board's powers, duties, and privileges, immunities, and liabilities.
Who is making this request?
Commissioner Miyasato.
Mr. Miyasato, so is that in the form of a motion to go in executive session?
Yes.
Do I have a second to that motion?
This is Commissioner Lee. I'll second the motion.
Mr. Miyasato, do you want to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I'd like to get some clarification on powers and duties before we do the calendar. Depending on the decision by the AG, I'd like to add something to the agenda,
Very well,
to the calendar.
understood. All in favor of going into executive session, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? No opposed. Pardon me?
Chair Giovanni, we're gonna need a recess because this is a hybrid meeting. I didn't prepare an executive session Zoom to separate the public from the commission. So I'm gonna need 5 to 10 minutes to set that up before you guys can start executive session. So can we recess?
So we will recess, and when we come back, can we go directly into executive session, or Ms. Kwan, do you need to manipulate it in such a way that we need to restart in full session?
I think that's an AG question.
Can you
I don't know.
remind you guys to log off?
Well, no, but there's public.
Ariana, this is Miranda. So,
Yeah, there's public on Zoom.
yeah, no, I understand. Are you gonna set up a separate Zoom or are you setting up a breakout room within this Zoom call?
So we use webinar that doesn't have breakout rooms. So I need to send a separate Zoom link and so everyone in the public will stay in this Zoom and then I'll jump the commissioners on a private Zoom so they could go in executive session.
Okay,
Agenda. Switch the order of the agenda.
Okay,
Yeah.
hold on, Chair. Commissioner Miyasato has another suggestion.
Chair, could we instead withdraw the motion and take the agenda out of order and do Mahi Solar? It'll be easier for the technical.
So your executive session, you want to have it before we hear the schedule, is that correct?
Yes.
And yeah, so Ms. Kwan, if we do that, could you work in parallel to set up that separate Zoom while we're dealing with Mahi Solar?
Sure.
Okay, I think that's a great suggestion, Commissioner Miyasato. So I'm going to defer action on the approved motion to go in exec session until after we complete the agenda item on Mahi Solar. So with this agenda item, I'm going to move directly into agenda item.
Giovanni,
Who's that?
Giovanni, I apologize for interrupting. It's Nancy Carr Smith. I
Yes.
just wanted, can I ask a clarifying question, please? You said that some commissioners have to leave at 12:30. Can you tell us who is leaving and how many people that is?
I'm unsure. I've been told that there are flights for commissioners and they have to leave at 12:30. I'm not sure which ones they are.
Martina?
I think all commissioners with flights have scheduled departure early.
Okay, mine's not till 3 something. Are you guys early? What's the reasoning for that? I mean, we hardly have any meetings and we're having a meeting and we're cutting it short. It was just wanted some clarification about that. If somebody could enlighten me. please.
Commissioner Carson, Dan Ardenter. Meeting was not expected to last very long because the adoption of the order should go fairly quickly. And there is a time frame that we gave to the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development for their presentation. Those were the only 2 items on the agenda, so we assumed that mid-afternoon would be sufficient time for the commissioners to hear everything that was on the agenda this morning.
Yeah, this is Chair. Let me also add that it has been customary in my experience that we try to accommodate individual commissioners' schedules when they have to leave early. That's been a longstanding protocol that I'm familiar with. So when advised that some commissioners were leaving early or were leaving by 12:30 as a hard stop, then I decided no lunch, we'll have a hard stop at that time.
Martina, are you looking at the schedule?
Yeah, I have scheduled departures at 3:45 at the latest. I don't know any personal commissioners that have to leave early. That was disclosed to the chair, but the scheduled departures on my list say 3:45. 3. That's 3:45 for Yamane, Carr Smith, and 3:15 for Miyasato.
Okay, so Carr Smith, again, just asking for clarification, who needs to leave the room at 12:30, if you don't mind?
Unfortunately, I think we need Ariana for that because she handles those logistics.
So time is of the essence. Let's get to the 4th order of business, and Ms. Commissioner Carr Smith will get that information to you if the commissioners wish to individually disclose it to you as we proceed. I am available. So,
Chair, this is Koike.
yes, Koike?
I just want to say for the record that because of the new rules and hybrid meetings and Zooms, that I am in fact here in my office alone by myself and there's no one else attending with me.
Thank you very much. Okay. I want to proceed to the 4th order of business, which is an agenda item. We're taking it out of order. It's the adoption of findings of fact, conclusions of law, and decision in order on SP 21-412, an application to modify. At this time, I'd like the parties to identify themselves, beginning with the petitioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Randall Sakamoto on behalf of petitioner Mahi Solar.
Thank you. City and County, Honolulu.
Good morning, Chair, Board. John DeBeal, Deputy Corporation Counsel for the City and County of Honolulu.
Thank you very much. And for OPSD?
Good morning, Katia Balastiano with the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development.
Thank you, Katia. I'd now like to review the reimbursement policy with Mr. Sakamoto. Mr. Sakamoto, have you reviewed HAR 15-15-45.1 regarding the reimbursement of hearing expenses?
Yes, I have, Chair.
Are they acceptable to you?
Yes, they are.
Thank you. Now we'd like to ask the commissioners about disclosure of any potential conflicts of interest. So in accordance with HRS 84-14, commissioners are not allowed to take any official action affecting a business in which they or a member of their family has a financial interest. They must therefore recuse themselves from this matter if there is any benefit, monetary or otherwise, to themselves or to family members. Also, in accordance with this legal, ethical standards, commissioners should disclose any relationship, business, social, or otherwise that they may have with the petitioner or its representatives or any other parties to this proceeding that may not give rise to the allegation of bias, that may give rise to the allegation of bias or impropriety. Let me state that when we heard the Mahi Solar previously, there were disclosures made, and to my mind, those do not need to be repeated at this time because they're still in effect. So do any commissioners have any new conflicts of interest or disclosures they wish to make at this time?
Chair, Commissioner Miyasato, I'll disclose that I was not present, so I'll be recusing myself from this vote.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other disclosures or statements of conflict?
Commissioner Hayashida, Chair. Also, I wasn't here, so I'm going to be abstaining from making a motion.
Okay, very well. Thank you both for clarifying that. So we'll proceed. Let me briefly explain the procedure. First, I'll call upon the written public testimony that has been submitted in this matter. Next, I will call for members of the public who wish to provide oral testimony on this matter. After completion of this public testimony portion of the proceedings, the chair would like to ask the parties if they had any comments on adoption of the order. At the conclusion of the parties' comments and the commissioner's questions, the public will again be granted the opportunity to provide public testimony in the same manner set forth previously. Finally, the commission will conduct its deliberations. Please be informed that relevant records and documents pertaining to this matter can be accessed for review on the LUC website at https://luc.hawaii.gov/SP21-412. I'll now ask for public testimony if Ms. Kwan is back in the room. Ms. Kwan, are you there?
I just got back, Chair.
Welcome back. Nice to hear your voice. Has there been any written testimony submitted on this matter? This is the Mahi Solar adoption order.
Yes, Chair, we received 2 written testimonies on the adoption of order, and both have been posted to the website.
Thank you very much. Are there any members of the public who have wished to testify on this matter?
Seeing none in the room, Chair, we're checking the Zoom right now and seeing none in the Q&A feature.
Very well, we'll proceed to the presentations. Mr. Sakamoto, do you have any comments you would like to make before we deliberate on adoption of the order?
The only comment I have, Chair, is I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to take a look at the draft DNO before today. Overall, I thought it was well done, very thorough. I did have a few minor suggested edits. They're primarily, typos and defined terms, very non-substantive type of edits. I did submit a red line version of the DNO to your staff, and not sure if you had a chance to look at it, but other than those very minor edits, I had no other comments and I have no presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Sakamoto. If you wouldn't mind, could you, just for the record, verbalize those suggested comments, because I'll ask the commissioners if they'd like to take a motion to adopt them.
Okay. There are quite a few. I don't know whether you want me to summarize them or just pick out examples. It may take a while. I did go page by page, line by line. So I don't know how much time you want to allocate to this exercise.
Well, I want to do it perfectly. So let's take them one by one and do it as fast as you can.
Okay, very well. On page 2 of the DNO, in the second paragraph, would it help if I showed this on the Zoom? I could share screen and just put the document on the screen. That may actually help.
Yes, let's do that.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. Are you able to see this?
Yes.
Great. So I had no comments on the cover page. And this first comment was to just add the reference to LUC 2021 decision and order. I think it's important. There were 2 decision and orders in 2021. And this is a defined term. As you can see, it's defined up here. I deleted the reference to TMK because it was not used in the document after this point. I changed parties with a capital P to lower P since it's not a defined term as far as I could tell. Corrected the reference to 2024 application to modify, which is the defined term used above. Again, referenced LUC 2021 decision and order. As I said before, there was a decision and order by the Planning Commission in 2021 and the LUC in 2021. And then there's a 2024 application to modify. So I tried to be consistent throughout the document. This was a defined term that was used here, 2024 application to amend. As I mentioned earlier, the term that was created was 2024 application to modify. Again, I tried to be consistent with that. Also in section 2, LUCs, I changed to LUC 2021 decision and order, again, solely for the purpose of consistency. This is, I guess these are section 3 on page 6. Again, inserted 2024 instead of 2023. This was the correct year that the DPP's director's report was issued. It was just this year. Section 4, just correcting a typo here by deleting the word the. Again, consistency with defined terms, 2024 application to modify. This is section 5 on page 6. Created the defined term PUC because it is used later in the document. Further down the page, the reference again to LUC 2021 decision and order. I added 2021. On page 7, item 7, I think the reference is to HECO and not the HECO. So I deleted the word the. I tried to be consistent. I know that the petitioner could be referred to as applicant or petitioner. I generally try to be consistent by referring to Mahi Solar as the petitioner. So hence the change in paragraph 7. Also on page 7, section 9, inserted the word the before petitioner. Very minor changes. On page 8, section 11, lowercase the T in the LUC received, and I think the proper spelling is courtesy copy here. And then reference the commission here as LUC. I think the draft DNO says the land use commission is referred to as either the commission or the LUC. I found LUC to be a preferable reference because there were 2 commissions technically involved, the Planning Commission of the City and County and the State Land Use Commission. And I found it less confusing to refer to the State Land Use Commission as LUC. So I used that reference here. Section 12, again, just a typo, lowercase r for the word received. The term Office of Planning and Sustainable Development was previously defined as OPSD, so I made that change here. Again, changed Land Use Commission to LUC. On page, also page 8, section 14, same change. Land Use Commission changed to LUC. Top of page 9 in section 14, same change. 2 times State Land Use Commission changed to LUC and Land Use Commission changed to LUC. Section 15, same change made twice. Section 16, same change made twice. 17, the first line, same change, Land Use Commission changed to LUC. In the middle of section 17, the term project is a defined term with a capital P, so I changed it from lowercase p to capital P. Again, further down, change the reference from applicant to petitioner. Further down, the reference to Department of Planning and Permitting was previously defined as DPP, so I changed the reference simply to DPP. And again, Office of Planning and Sustainable Development is simply OPSD. The section 18 at the bottom of page 9, just a typo, changed parties to lowercase p. Again, section 19 on the top of page 10, changed applicant to petitioner. Same change made to paragraph 21. I didn't see the need to define Office of Planning and Sustainable Development again, since it was defined above. So I deleted the parenthetical. Again, references to Land Use Commission is LUC and Department of Planning and Permitting is DPP in section 22. And down at the bottom of page 10 and the top of page 11, I think the reference to the Planning Commission was previously defined as City and County of Honolulu Planning Commission, so I didn't see the need to repeat it here. Section, I guess this is 22B, Romanet 1. There was a defined term SEF for solar energy facilities. I did not see this term used again in the document, so I thought it would be appropriate to delete. The reference to the Mahi solar project is simply the project. So I changed it to just the project. And further down, paragraph 23, this is just consistency again for referencing the LUC 2021 decision and order. This is the defined term that's been used. Going down to page 12, section 24, the reference to DPP was previously defined, so I deleted the text that defined it again. Similarly, second line of paragraph 24 changed Land Use Commission to LUC. Same change made to the first line of paragraph 25. In paragraph 26, again, the Mahi Solar project is simply the project in this document. Paragraph 27, condition 4 of the LUC 2021 decision and order. Simple change made for consistency of reference. Same change made in the second line, LUC 2021 decision and order. Down at the bottom, as I said, the Land Use Commission was previously defined as the LUC, so I changed the reference there. Going to page 13, section 28, capitalize the word project because that's a defined term. So this is maybe not a simple typo or mechanical. I did revise this to say the petitioner describes establishment of the project as the completion of the project and commencement of general commercial operation. So I think that's what was said in the record. This reference to commencement of, I think, was important for accuracy purposes. The paragraph 29.
Mr. Sakamoto, let me just.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a clarifying comment on that last one. General commercial operation is a specific term used by HECO in its PPA, So that's why we use that term in our discussions. I just want to make that clarification.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I think the question that basically triggered this response was, when does the petitioner consider the establishment of the project to occur?
Yeah.
So they're trying to pinpoint a moment in time as to when that occurs, because we're given a deadline to establish the project. So the question is, when have you exactly done it? And
yeah, general
Yeah.
commercial operation is a defined moment in time in the PPA. So I think your suggestion makes it even clearer. I don't have a problem with it, but I think it was fine already.
Okay. Going down to paragraph 29, again, Hawaiʻi Electric Company was previously defined in the document as HECO, so there was no need to put it again. I deleted this reference to RFP because there was no other reference to RFP in the document, so we didn't need to create the defined term. So this is another maybe more substantive change. It says here, at the time of the hearing, the project had been selected by HECO in their request for proposal. However, the interconnection requirement study, which is previously defined as IRS, still needed to be completed. And once the IRS is completed, petitioner will then continue negotiations with HECO to determine pricing and following the finalization of cost, the PPA, which was previously defined, will need to be finalized and approved. And so I cleaned up this paragraph in accordance with the way I understood the testimony at the hearing.
So the way you've cleaned it up is consistent with my understanding as well.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to paragraph 30, PPA was defined as power purchase agreement, so I used the defined term. Project was defined with a capital P, so I capitalized the term. Paragraph 31, I think, was in response to a question regarding how much of the petition area does the petitioner intend to farm? And the DNO draft said petitioner intends to farm all acres of land aside from areas limited for safety reasons. I think that was probably accurate. I thought it would help to clarify all acres of land within the petition area so that there's no implication that we're going to try to farm areas outside the petition area. Moving on to page 14, section 35. The way it was drafted, petitioner and project area has water. I think what the appropriate way to phrase this is, petitioner stated that the petition area has water available through Kunia Water Association and Fat Law Farms to provide water to the farmers within the petition area as opposed to on the property. Portions of, again, I replaced property with petition area just to be specific, have irrigation installed, and other portions will require trucking the water to the farmers. I just thought that this was actually clearer, that it doesn't say where the waters will be trucked to. I think it is trucked to the farmers. So, and then on this paragraph 36, I was told that there should be a hyphen between single and access. This was a comment my client made. And then the phrase adjustments will be made to the distance and wideness of, it was not troughs, but rows, referring to the rows of the panels. In paragraph 37, the project and the, again, interconnection requirement study has been already defined as IRS. So I changed this to say the project and the IRS contemplate inclusion of a new HECO switching station with a double circuit 138 kV extension. This word extension was missing, to tie into the Kahiwaiʻao with a hyphen transmission line. It was written initially as to tie into the Kahiwaiʻao power line. So,
Yeah, that's good.
okay. Paragraph 38, there was a reference here to price of megawatt hour increased from the stage 2 former bid from the low 100s. I think it meant the low $100 because the reference to around $105 to $110. So I just put in the dollar symbol here, just
Actually,
to clarify.
it was dollars per megawatt.
Okay. That change would be
Additional.
fine. Yeah.
So can you agree to suggest that as part of your corrections to change that to be dollars per megawatt?
Yes.
Thank you.
And paragraph 39, I think the appropriate statement here, the original draft said the Internal Revenue Service, it should be Interconnection Requirement Study, IRS, as I mentioned, is conducting the facility study and system impact study. I clarified this to say HECO is conducting the IRS, which is true. The IRS examines, among other things, the project's effects on HECO's grid and engineering of interconnection facilities and equipment. Therefore, the IRS must be completed prior to the completion of the PPA. I believe this is the more accurate statement regarding the relevance of the IRS to the PPA.
I agree.
Okay. Paragraph 40 and 41, the same change from applicant to petitioner. And this is the bottom of paragraph 42. On the top of page 16, it references the vote. There being a vote total. I changed this to say there being a vote of 7 ayes, 0 nays, and 2 excused, and the motion passed. And then the conclusions of law section starting on page 16, the term SUP was defined here in section 2, so I tried to be consistent and use it from this point forward to use SUP instead of special use permit or special permit. And here I changed this from for areas greater than to for land with an area greater than. I think this is what the rules actually say, the LUC rules. This is conclusion of law number 5 at the top of page 17. I changed applications to petitioner, and this phrase now reads, because the petitioner seeks a SUP for the land, which is greater than 15 acres. Just a clarification change. Section 9 on page 18 and section 11, again, just changed applicant to petitioner. That change is not critical, but I was just trying to make it easier to read so that there are fewer defined terms being used. Decision and order starting on page 20, again, changed applicant to petitioner and did not define DPP again because it was already defined, did not define OPSD again because it was already defined. Again, applicant to petitioner. This is actually, basically just a consistency change. And then the last change, I just tried to make this consistent with the formatting of the DNOs that I'm familiar with, where it reads done at Honolulu, Hawaii, this blank day of November 2024. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sakamoto. I appreciate you going through with a fine tooth comb, and I think it makes for a better product, and I appreciate the diligence on that. I agree that more than 95% of your comments were cleanup, and a couple were relevant and appreciated. but we'll deliberate on whether we'll adopt them all or not at the end. So commissioners, do you have any questions for the petitioner at this time? Ms. Kwan, is anybody raising their hand?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, great. Then we'll proceed, excuse me, with the county. Do you have any comments you'd like to make before we deliberate an adoption of the order?
Yes, Chair. I'd like to recommend that we adopt the Mr. Sakamoto's revised order instead of the original order. But besides that, no comments. Thank you. And again, this is John DeBeal for the county.
Thank you, Mr. DeBeal. Commissioners, any questions or comments to the county? Okay, we'll proceed with OPSD. Do you have any comments you'd like to make before we deliberate on adoption of the order?
Katia Balastiano for OPSD. No comments. Agree with the county. All of those recommendations for change were reasonable and appropriate. We would recommend adoption. Thank you.
So Katia, I think I need to swear you in for your testimony. So do you please state your name and affiliation for the record?
Katia Balastiano, Office of Planning and Sustainable Development.
So we'll do this backwards. Do you swear that the comments you just made were the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, any comments on the OPSD?
Seeing none, Chair.
Thank you very much. This time I'd like to give the public a second opportunity if they're in attendance or have signed up to give public testimony. Mr. Kwan, is there anyone there?
Currently, no one is in the Q&A feature indicating they want to provide testimony.
Thank you very much. So we'll now deliberate. Commission will consider adoption of the order. Commissioners, before you, for your consideration, deliberation, and adoption are the proposed findings of fact, conclusions of law, and decisions and orders prepared by staff as instructed on the last meeting. We've also had a suggestion by the petitioner to revise on a point-by-point basis this order. So the chair will entertain a motion to adopt it as was, or adopt it including the one or all of the suggested changes that were made by Mr. Sakamoto and supported by the county and the state. So,
Chair, this is Chair Lee.
Chair Lee, please proceed. Commissioner.
I will make a motion to incorporate the revisions suggested by Mr. Sakamoto and adopt the findings of facts, conclusions of law, and decision and order for SP 21-412, SUP number 2020/SUP-7's draft application to modify.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Lee. Do I have a second to that motion?
Mr. Mayor, this is Commissioner Yamane. I have a question for staff before we go through the motion. Is that okay?
Yes, please go ahead.
I guess I just wanted to ask staff, are we okay with the red line adoption of changes, whoever drafted?
Yes, Commissioner Yamane, we reviewed Mr. Sakamoto's submittal and we don't have any problem with the corrections he's making.
Okay, then I just had one clarifying point for the record that on number 38, here you recommended it was $105 to $110 per megawatt. As stated on the price of megawatt hour, it's per megawatt hour. So just wanted to make that clarification for Mr. Sakamoto, if he's okay with that.
Yes, that change is fine. And if you want me to submit another revised draft with that change, I can do that. But otherwise, I'll defer to your staff to make that edit. Either way is fine.
So if the motion it passes, we will include in the motion to make that change. You will not need to submit an additional copy.
Thank you, Chair.
So Commissioner Yamane, did you second the motion?
No, I just had questions for the staff. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So I'm still looking for a second to the motion made by Commissioner Lee. Commissioner Lee.
I'll second the motion.
Okay,
Who was speaking?
sorry. Go ahead, Mr. U'u.
So I
I'll
heard it.
second the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Carr Smith, did you want to comment at this time?
No, thank you. I was attempting to second. Thank
Oh,
you.
okay. I couldn't tell from here. Thank you. Okay, so Commissioner Lee, did you want to add any further comment to your motion?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Wu, did you have any further comment?
None at this time, Chair.
Okay, other commissioners, any comments you'd like to make in support or in opposition to this motion? The chair has no further comments except to thank again Mr. Sakamoto for his diligence. And so the motion is to adopt the order as drafted and as suggested, amendments made in writing by Mr. Sakamoto, and also including the further verbal corrections to add megawatts past the numerical values, and I think it was in item 30. So that being the case, Mr. Orndanker, will you take a roll call vote?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The motion is as stated by the chair. Commissioner Lee,
Aye.
Commissioner U'u,
Aye.
Commissioner Yamane,
Aye.
Commissioner Kamakeo, hello,
Aye.
Commissioner Kahele. Aye. Commissioner Carr Smith,
Aye.
Commissioners Hayashida and Miyasato abstained. Chair Giovanni.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The motion passes with 7 affirmative votes.
Thank you very much. So we'll now proceed back to our former item. Ms. Kwan, are we prepared? Have you issued a new Zoom link for commissioners? Should we vote in affirmative to go into executive session?
Yes, Mr. Chair, a Zoom link should have been emailed to all the commissioners that are on the Zoom, and we have a separate link as well. So everyone needs to log out of this Zoom and log into the executive session Zoom.
So please clarify for the record who you mean by everyone.
Only commissioners, and only you received the links. The public did not receive a copy of the executive session link.
How about Deputy AG
Oh, yes, and Miranda Steed has a copy of the link as well.
and the executive officer?
Well, he's in the main room, so that's up to the commission if they want him in the room or if he has to exit executive session. I don't know if that was clarified yet.
So I do not know the specific substance of the request. So I am inviting the executive officer to join us. And if it turns out that we want to ask him to leave, we'll ask him to leave. So
Okay, would you like LUC staff in executive session as well, or would you like us to exit the room?
exit the room except for executive officer.
Understood.
So let me thank Mr. Sakamoto and others who were had been in the room. I think we're concluded with your business. And then OPSD and county, we invite you to return after executive session and we'll start your briefing.
Sorry.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, so we need to sign, for those of us that are on Zoom already, we need to sign off that Zoom and then on to the other one, correct?
Yes, please exit this Zoom link. Everyone in their email, all commissioners and AG should have received a separate Zoom link that says LUC executive session. If you did not, please call me immediately so I can resend it to you. And we're gonna log out of this one in the room so that way we could log into the main one and all the public will stay on this current Zoom link.
And then when exec session is over, we'll go back to this one.
Correct. So you'll log out of the executive session link and you'll log back into the meeting link, which I can resend if that helps commissioners with a smoother flow.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That mic off?
Wait,
So
I
we
gotta.
So we will take a recess and go into exec session. Okay, I'm going to call this meeting back into session. I had earlier said that we were shooting for a 12:30 PM adjournment. I'm going to push that till 1:30 PM Pacific Hawaii time adjournment, which is about an hour and 40 minutes from now by my clock. Hopefully that gives us enough time to complete our business today. We were in executive session. Let me briefly state for the record that the purpose of that session was so that the commissioners could confer with our Attorney General on the specific question of agendizing items for business before the LUC, consistent with Sunshine Law and the process by which that can and should occur going forward, and as well as a discussion on how it has been handled in the past. And that was the purpose of the session. Ms. Deed, do you think that adequately covers what we talked about in session?
Yep, that's good.
Thank you so much. Okay, let us now turn to back to earlier agenda item, which we put off, which is for the executive officer to present the tentative meeting schedule.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are no further meetings scheduled for November or December. In January, we have a meeting on the 23rd, which is going to be our quarterly update, and also to discuss the bills submitted to the legislature or the bills in the legislature that are of concern. And then on February 19th, we'll be on Maui for SB 97-390 to add or remove the IAL designation. And on the 20th, we will also be on Maui to hear a motion by A and B properties on AO 7772, and also to hear an Emmanuel Lutheran status report on AOS 773. And that is as far as we have anything agendized.
Chair, this is Commissioner Lee. I want to ask a question of the executive officer.
Please proceed, Commissioner Lee.
Yeah, I think I would like to see more reports sooner, because it's November now, and it sounds like we're not going to have a meeting until February. The legislative session starts in mid-January, and I know there's been discussions going on about proposed legislation and policy. And why aren't we meeting sooner, since there's so many important issues, to schedule something like a legislative update sooner, before the bill submittal deadline, or even before they're even submitted for consideration? Shouldn't we be seeing that sooner?
Well, Commissioner Lee, we don't have anything. We're not submitting anything. We have nothing. We don't even know at this point what the governor's package is going to look like. And we probably won't know for several more weeks. We do have a meeting scheduled early in January to discuss the legislative matters. And that is because that's when most of the bills get submitted. But we don't have anything planned to discuss with the commission, because we don't have anything and we don't know what the administration is going to submit.
Thank you. But I know that you're part of policy meetings and discussions with other agencies. There's that YIMBY law where you're a part of that working group to discuss legislation. I mean, I'd like to be updated on what the latest thinking is on that. Isn't that something that you feel like we should be reported to on?
Scott, when is the next YMBY meeting?
We need a mic.
This is Scott Derrickson, Land Use Commission. I've been attending several of the meetings of the YMBA meeting, the group. We've only had two meetings that I can remember. The next meeting hasn't been scheduled yet. So we're waiting here on that. What exactly would you like to know?
Yeah, I know there's been two meetings and there's been substantive stuff discussed, like increasing the acreage for DBAs for the counties, affordable housing stuff. There's at least 4 or 5 items I'm aware of that have been discussed by the YIMBY group. And I think we should know about that, especially if we're going to be, part of the solution, and you would want to know what the will of the board is and not just from the executive officer. So that's why it would be good if we got a report on these 4 or 5 major policies that are being discussed. That's what I'm asking. I don't think we have to wait until the end after it's already done for us to express our opinion and, what we think the direction should be.
Commissioner Lee, we do have, I just recently received it a day or two ago. I don't know whether you qualify it as an agenda or issues to be discussed that we can forward on to the commission, but that's all it is. It's just issues to be discussed. I mean, we don't have anything definitive yet, but I'm more than happy to share that with the commissioners.
I'd be happy to ask folks who are coordinating the YMBA, right? The YIMBY meetings group for any information that they have put together, summary meeting notes, things like that.
Yeah, I just find it kind of disappointing that this is now November and we should be having a meeting next month to get that, not wait till February when it's too late. Maybe the legislature would like to know how this board feels. There's 3 new members on it. We're a big part. Some people think we're the problem. Some people think LUC is the problem, and so I don't think we should not have an opinion. I don't think it should be just the executive officer's opinion. And I just think that we should have a meeting prior to all this being cemented.
I mean, we currently have a meeting scheduled for mid-January, but we can schedule a meeting earlier than that. December is problematic, but early January is open currently. There is no, I mean, I don't know how to respond to that because usually we don't get that information on what's going to be submitted or what's being proposed until the last minute.
Thank you. I know you're involved in discussions about policy and everything, and you're invited to meetings. You're part of that YIMBY law. So
that is the only group that we're a part of. We don't. I mean, the only other thing that's happened so far is that there was a meeting to discuss a proposed bill by OPSD, which we were invited to attend, and we took no position on it. But other than that, nothing has occurred.
Okay, I'd like to have a meeting in December if that's possible. When we sign up for this board, we commit to 4 days a week, 4 days a month that we're going to be available. And you've even testified that we spend 30% of our time as commissioners on LUC business, but it just sounds like affordable housing and other issues like that are a major issue, and yet we're not even meeting. We're not we're not in the discussion at all, and we're not even aware of what the discussion is. And so I think that if we're going to be effective, we need to meet a lot more than every 3 months. And so I'd like to see a meeting in December to get some of these updates and so that we can share our input.
So let me break that down into 2 parts. Part 1 would be, what is the problem? This is directed to the executive officer. What is the issue or problems in scheduling a meeting in December?
There's a lot of vacation that's being taken by staff. There's a lot of vacation being taken by commissioners. December meetings are problematic as a result of that. We can try, but I don't know what kind of a quorum we'll get and whether will have staff to cover it.
Okay, so why don't you, let me ask that you research that immediately following this meeting. and look for an opportunity for a meeting in December, and look for an opportunity for a meeting in early January, as soon as the holidays are over. One or both, and just see what might be viable and possible to accomplish. The second part of my question is to everyone. So again, this grows from our discussion in executive session on process. If any commissioners want to articulate a specific agenda item for a December or January meeting, the sooner you do that, the better. Because it takes about 3 weeks to get it articulated, consistent with sunshine law, get it drafted accordingly, get it approved by the AG, and get it published in due time for the public. So let me throw out that opening to commissioners I don't want to hear just complaints about what we're not hearing. I want to hear specifically what you want to hear in as much detail as you can do, and then we'll try to get that on an agenda in January or December, earlier than the meeting of January 23rd. The other thing which you did not mention, and I had an expectation, is that we would be getting this commission would be getting a preview and an opportunity to comment on the forthcoming budget. So what's the timing of that budget process, and whether or not this commission could get an opportunity to participate in that?
I don't have that calendar up in front of me, but I believe that our budgets are going to, well, we don't even have the instructions from BNF yet, so I'm not sure when we'll have a budget that will be submitted. I will caution that when the budgets are preliminary, we're asked to keep them confidential because the governor has not made decisions yet on those budgets. I mean, if there is some line item in particular that a commissioner wants to see added or subtracted, we can present that as the program, but our final budget is usually not. We don't determine that, but the BNF finalizes the budget. We make our recommendations, but we don't finalize it.
Yeah, so do you see a problem based on your understanding of the process with sharing and your recommendations and seeking commission concurrence or further comment on the recommendations?
I think timing is the issue. We'll have to go back and check what the process is, what the process timing is, and our submittals are required. But I can tell you that at this point in time that our budget is the same as it was last year, and that the only increases are collective bargaining increases. We're not making any other changes to our budget whatsoever. We're not asking for any other changes to our budget.
Yeah, I think there's a variety of desires and opinions among the sitting commissioners. Some, my expectation, or this is my characterization based on my understanding, it varies from, I have no interest to participate in the budget process, you just take care of it, to like, I want to have absolute input for everybody to consider on a line by line basis in the budget and everything in between. But to date, we've not, in history, the commissioners themselves have not directly participated in the preparation or recommendations for the budget. In prior commission hearings, we've actually discussed with staff in public the desire for this commission to have a better involvement. We've also had an understanding and expectations that the DBED would be issuing further guidance on a more consistent budgeting process among all the boards and commissions with which it's affiliated, but I've not received anything on that. So what I'm asking for today is clarification on the budget timing and process, and whether or not, if there's a role that we can play as a commission, which might be small or large, whatever it turns out to be, that we get that agendized in a time that is consistent with when that information is needed by DBET.
Okay, we will attempt to schedule a meeting to discuss that issue in December. And we'll have to see what kind of a quorum we can get.
Okay, that's all we ask at this time. Thanks, Dan.
Chair, this is Commissioner Lee. Nobody asked me if I was available, or as far as I know, anyone else, in December or late November or January. And if we're going to have a meeting on legislative stuff in December, if possible, then we should also add the budget discussion as well. That can be done in executive session. And, it'd be good to see to refresh our memories, last year's budget, as well as the draft for next year's budget. And maybe there's nothing, but, I'd rather see and not see what the budget's going to be. So if that can be done in December, that would be great.
Question.
Mr. Oʻahu.
Aloha. I just wanted to kind of share my mana'o about the YIMBY meetings, which I just learned about. So I would like to know, I want to be proactive in understanding what's happening instead of finding out after. I think part of I'm frustrated. Part of my learning curve is like when we did the CRM MOU, MOA, I kind of found out after the fact. And I kind of I was confused as to why it wasn't presented to us prior. So when I hear about YIMBY meetings and who's involved and what's involved and what would be the hopeful outcome, and when I hear our director said, we took no position on it. And my question is, when he say we, I like to know, is it the director or is it the LUC? Because that's what I just heard. We took no position on it. And then I like what you're saying, Chair, that we give you and articulate our email into what we're asking. And it goes back to, if I don't know what's going on, how can I ask? Or how can I articulate the ask? If I guess the director or the staff is having meetings or YIMBY meetings that might have a potential outcome that we would want to participate in, meaning the body. So I'm kind of asking, who has the authority to say, oh, we took no position? Is it the director or is it the commission? Because unlike, again, the MOA or the MOU, I had no idea till later. And I was like kind of taken aback by it. Like, wait, does the body have say or does it just have say when it lands on us? So I would like to be proactive on some of the approaches and not reactive. So who has that authority? Like, we took no position on it. And I'm not saying it was good or bad, could have been minor, could have been major, could have been minor, could have been, who has that say? Because I didn't have an opportunity to say we take no position on it. Just curious. Who has it? Who has the wherewithal to say yay or nay? Is it the body? Or is it our director? That's the clarification I probably need. Chair, by the way, I think you're doing pretty good up there right now.
Commissioner, if I can answer that question. First of all, it's very difficult sometimes to get these things in front of the commission for a decision because we get a request by the director, for instance, to come and discuss something, and we only have a week notice or a couple of days notice sometimes. When I said we took no position, it's exactly that, because I had not consulted with the commission. We took no position. Further from previous meetings.
And that is something I'll be concerned about. Because what if we wanted to take a position? And I know it might be difficult, is what you use, difficult, but it is difficult for me to make the meetings, hence me on Zoom, right? I just say define difficult, and I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying in a time of a housing crisis, Yeah, we representing people who live in the islands. That's difficult. There's degrees of difficulties, yeah, how I look at it, yeah. So your difficult might be different than other difficult. My difficult might be different, but I think we deserve an opportunity to hear what's being presented out there. So maybe we can chime in on what we should or should not do.
When I say difficult, I mean we don't have time to agendize a meeting.
Well, we got to figure something out, my friend. That's what I'm saying, because when I hear we took no position on it, it gives offense to me because I never had the opportunity to weigh the outcome. So I don't know if it's late, but, and again, so if we can take the meetings, because we have time, and discuss the issues, being we have the time, I would love to be part of the discussion.
Chair, this is Commissioner Lee. You know, I think maybe it should be clarified that instead of saying we take no position, it should be that the issue was not addressed yet by the LUC commissioners. I think that's a little bit more clear and accurate. Because, you know, there's going to be issues coming up like the counties want more than 15 acres to do DBAs. Now, I know that's a controversial question, but, you know, maybe we have new commissioners. Maybe people feel differently. Maybe now people recognize that there's a problem. And, you know, things like that evolve. And that affects the budget too. If the problem is that we don't have enough staff, and we tell the governor's office or the legislature that, well, we'd like to build more housing, but we don't have 1 or 2 more staff at the LUC. I think if that's the real problem, then they're going to figure something out. But they don't know that that may or may not be the problem. So I think we should have a standing agenda item recurring that we have legislative updates at every meeting so that we don't run into sunshine issues that, oh, well, we didn't agendize that for the next meeting. And, you know, the executive officer can work with the deputy AG to put enough detail so that it meets the requirements for sunshine, but to have that, that direction that we need legislative updates on a recurring basis to be, you know, crafted in more fine detail as you come up to that meeting. But to just not put anything, I think, is just being derelict.
Chair, this is Ariana. May I speak?
Please, Ariana.
To be respectful of OPSD's time, I would suggest I will email all the commissioners for quorum for December and January. I did email for December previously, but it was all the way in August, so it's been a while. But I will quorum for January because I haven't done that yet. And then I will email all the commissioners asking what agenda items you want brought on the agenda for that future meeting. And then we'll move from there. Does that sound fair? Can we move?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that's a reasonable approach. Let me say that, you know, I have informed the commissioners that I welcome all requests for agendizing items on for our meetings. And I will, you know, we need about 3 weeks to process those requests and get them on the agenda. So we just have to be respectful of the time that's required, and they have to be articulated in enough specifics that we give the public the opportunity to decide to participate in the process or not in a meaningful way. So yes, I welcome your suggestions, and I would like to move on now. Is there anything further on the, I don't want to cut it off if there's something particularly relevant to the schedule. So commissioners, one last time, I know we need to move to OPSD. Do you have anything further on the, do you have anything further on the, or staff, anything further on the calendar?
Chair, I would like to say that I take offense to the use of the word derelict. This commission has not had any interest in legislation previously. The responsibility for policy is with OPSD. It is not with us. We are a regulatory body. Up until this year, the commissioners have not had any interest in legislation, and so that it was never brought forward before. You know, this is a changed commission. I will recognize that. However, I think staff needs time to adapt to what the commissioner's desires are, and accusing us of being derelict is improper.
Thank you for that clarifying position, Mr. Rundaker. So noted.
Chair, this is Commissioner Lee. I don't think that we should assume that just because we never did stuff before, then we shouldn't even think about doing it in the future. I think that's why we're in this problem.
You know, you guys are talking past each other now, and it's not productive. You're just throwing mischaracterizations at each other, and I'd just like to bring that to an end, and I'd like to move on with the business of today. So unless you've got something specific to say, specific, not about each other, but about the calendar, we're going to move on to OPSD. Hearing none, let me turn it over to Mary Alice.
Thank you, Chair and members. I'm Mary Alice Evans, thank you very much, Ariana.
Yes, sorry.
No, I appreciate it. And by the way, we're here as long as you want to have us here. We are prepared to stay and answer as many questions as you might have. So time is not an issue for us, but thank you, Ariana, for being so thoughtful. For most of you, this may be a new presentation, but I think for the chair, we did do a briefing of the commission in July 2022. And it's our pleasure to be here and to provide you with an overview of the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. And then the second phase of our presentation. Yes, can all of you hear me? I should have checked.
Yeah, you're good. Keep going.
Okay. We're going to do this in two phases. The first will be a quick overview of all of the programs that comprise the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. And that's why we have all of our program leads here for you to ask questions. And we're going to go through that and then introduce each of the program leads so that you have an opportunity to hear from them as well. The second phase of our presentation will be specifically on LUC matters that the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development provides support to. And that one it will be much more detailed, I think. And again, we encourage any questions you might have. Ariana, do I tell you when I want to change?
Sorry. Let me know.
Okay.
So Ms. Evans, would you prefer that the commissioners pose their questions as we go or wait till the end?
I think pose the questions as you go.
Okay, that's good.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so Office of Planning and Sustainable Development has eight statutes that we have to comply with. And we're letting you see these so you can see the range of statutory obligations that our staff, a fairly small staff, but definitely bigger than the Land Use Commission staff, has to comply with. The Board of Geographic Names, the Land Use Commission statute, our Coastal Zone Management statute, our enabling statute 225M, the Hawaii Climate Change Mitigation and Adaptation Initiative, which is we are the co-chair of with DLNR, the Hawaii State Planning Act, which last session the legislators passed and the governor enacted a bill to do an update of that statute. And so we're haven't started yet, but that's something that we would be happy to brief the commission on if you request it. And then we also have the Chapter 341 and 343 for the Environmental Advisory Council and Environmental Impact Statement Law, which is a new program for us, and we'll go into that. Next slide. Quick organizational overview. That I want you to be sure and note that that line between the Land Use Commission and OPSD is a dotted line. You have policy autonomy, and you don't report to us. The legislature incorporated, attached the Land Use Commission to the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development to support the Land Use Commission, but to provide that policy autonomy. You also have fiscal autonomy. That means your budget does not flow up through the Office of Planning. It goes directly to DBED. And we have taken a step recently to strengthen that for you so that you have an even clearer fiscal autonomy. And then, as you can see, the other projects or programs that are in the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development, starting to your left, our Coastal Zone Management Program, which has a Marine and Coastal Zone Advisory Council, Advocacy Council. Our Environmental Review Program, which is the former Office of Environmental Quality Control. It used to be in the Department of Health and is now with us. And they have the Environmental Advisory Council. The Geospatial Information Systems Program, which is a statewide program that oversees 1,000 users of GIS licenses in the state. And it also supports the Hawaii Board of Geographic Names. The Land Use Commission Division, and the TOD Transit-Oriented Development Program which also supports the TOD Council, for which is a partnership program with the Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation. And then another dotted line is the Hawaii Climate Change Mitigation and Adaptation Commission. Don Chang and I are the co-chairs at this current time. And other programs are our Special Plans Branch, which is currently working on economic disaster recovery for Maui wildfires and COVID using federal funds, and is also where we are, our comprehensive economic development strategy is updated every 5 years, and is working on an economic development district designation from the U.S. Department of Commerce to enable us to the state and nonprofits to apply for more federal grants for economic development. I think the point I'd like to make is that the Office of Planning and the Hawaii State Planning Act are broader than land use. They encompass social justice, natural resource protection, Native Hawaiian entitlements, and a prosperous and stable economy and housing. So let's move to the next slide, Ariana. So these are the boards and commissions that we support. And you've already had an overview of that in the statutes and the organization. Moving forward, Ariana, let's start with Coastal Zone Management. We have with us today our new Coastal Zone Management Manager, Chris Liu. Chris, you want to give a brief overview of this slide? And that's the on.
Yeah, it's red, so okay. Aloha, everyone. My name is Chris Liu. I'm, as Mariana said, the new program manager for the CZM program. With me is Deb Mendez, in case questions beyond me come up. When we say coastal zone, in Hawaii, it's very unique because the entire state is within what's called the coastal zone. So that's all lands of the state, and then all the way down to the shoreline, and then extending from the shoreline into the state's marine waters up to the U.S. territorial waters. So it's Mauka to Makai, a lot of effects, upland, factor into what goes into the ocean. So a few things that we're focusing on right now is the implementation phase of our 2020 Ocean Resources Management Plan. That's this nice book here. We have copies if anyone wants hard copies. It's also available online. And the three kind of main priorities that we're looking at right now is coastal hazards, land-based pollution, and marine ecosystems, which you see up there. And we've listed a few of the projects that are ongoing right now to help support those focus areas. As we move forward into the future, we're gonna continue to look at adaptation strategies specifically related to climate change and sea level rise. And we're going to continue to serve as we serve as the kind of the lead agency to assist and support the counties that are implementing and enforcing the rules of the special management area. So the SMA, for those of you that are specific with those areas, familiar with those areas. Deb, anything on other key highlights?
Yep. We are the coordinating agency for the Marine and we're the coordinating agency for the Marine and Coastal Advocacy Council, as Mary Alice had mentioned, and we are also the avenue for the BIL funding for habitat restoration and climate resilience projects.
And then I guess we also provide comments for environmental assessments and environmental impact statements. And so that gets factored into decisions that are made. We're available for questions. Yeah, thank you.
So much. I'd like to note this is our largest program. It's actually the one that's been with the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development the longest. It was created back in the 70s, prior to the establishment of the Office of State Planning in 1987. It moved over from the old Department of Planning and Economic Development a year after the establishment of the Office of State Planning. And it's almost 100% federally funded, but not quite. And so very important for us because it works with all 4 counties and their planning departments. And we help fund their special management area planners. So we have a partnership relationship with all 4 counties that we nurture and work with, plus all the state agencies that are involved in these ocean resource management plan priorities. If you're ready, we'll move on to the environmental review program. Tom Eisen is here. Tom has been with the environmental review program and with the coastal zone management program for many years, and he'll review this slide.
Yes, hello everyone. Tom Eisen here. I'm the planner with the Environmental Review Program, and we're the program formerly known as OEQC, as was mentioned, the Office of Environmental Quality Control, before we were statutorily transferred into DBED's Office of Planning and Sustainable Development in 2021. So we're still we fit well, and we're still figuring that out. We were an independent, a small independent agency, and our program is smaller now than it was, so we're trying to do a lot. But our main purpose is to facilitate Hawaii's environmental review process pursuant to Chapter 343. A lot of people know of the process by the acronym HEPA. It's kind of a short code for it. Doesn't actually stand for anything, but it has reference to NEPA, the national program, which is similar to it. Similar but different, definitely different. So some priorities of what we do, certainly publishing the environmental notice. That's twice a month on the 8th and 23rd of every month. Rain or shine, holidays, weekends, gets published to announce the availability of new EAs and EISs and associated agency determinations. We maintain an online library of thousands of EAs and EISs dating back to the 1970s. We provide guidance and support to a range of stakeholders in the process, certainly agencies such as the LUC, and so definitely with the staff of many agencies, certainly the staff LUC, applicants, consultants, legislators, special interest groups, the public. There's a lot of people that participate in the environmental review process. Public participation, that's a big part of it, and that's maybe our main role in the process. As an office, an entity, we don't have oversight over any given project going through the process, but we try to facilitate public's involvement, and we help anyone who needs to understand how the process works. It's a very process-oriented thing. I can go into a lot of nuance and details of the process. maybe we can save for another time if necessary. It can go for hours about that. We also provide staff support to the Environmental Advisory Council, a body maybe similar to yours, although advisory. And so that's a big part of what we do. I guess I can get into some of the content. I don't want to spend too much time because there's a whole lot of other programs that need to talk, but maybe the biggest thing to take home from the environmental process is a disclosure process. It's not a regulatory process. It's triggered by the need for an approval. So it's essentially, it's a disclosure process embedded within an approval or regulatory process. So there's some potential confusion and complexities about that. I can provide a lot of detail. That's what we often provide guidance to the agencies going through it, is how to differentiate the 343 part from the bigger permit approval that they're going through. Not every proposed action goes through this HEPA process. You need to trigger for the process to apply. The triggers are statutorily defined in Chapter 343. There's a range of them. I won't go into all of them, but for the Land Use Commission, probably the most relevant trigger is the proposed reclassification of conservation district lands. That's established as a trigger. And so that probably is the one that would be the most relevant. There's a few other ones. Certainly the most common trigger across all the process is the proposed use of state or county lands or funds. That captures most actions by most agencies. But as far as private, there's a lot of private actions on private lands that do not trigger the HEPA process. But if you're proposing reclassification of conservation district lands or the use of them, those are two triggers. A critical aspect of the disclosure process is that proposed mitigation measures that might get described in an EA or in an EIS are not inherently enforceable. It's just a disclosure document. It says these are some things that can mitigate the action. For those to be enforceable, they would need to be added as permit conditions to the actual permit that follows the process. So that's an important takeaway message. And let's see, there's always some agency, not OPSD, that is in charge of the process when some applicant that's triggered the process. There's always some agency, and it's possible that in the case of the Land Use Commission, a different agency may already have essentially managed the HEPA process for that action, depending on what permits and approvals are necessary. And the rules and statute clarified that one proposed action goes through the process one time, and then everybody else honors the result of that process. So if an EA has already been prepared for an action because some other agency was in charge, then that is, the requirements have been met. So it's, there may be ideas of how an agency wants to address it, but there's a lot of rules and process that need to be followed. There's three major levels of review. An environmental assessment is probably the most well-known. Environmental impact statements, when the idea that there's likely to be a significant impact by the proposed action. And then it's possible for an agency to exempt an action from the erstwhile requirement of preparing an environmental assessment. Those number of agency determinations that need to be made during the process, and those are legally challengeable. So you want to get them right. Yeah. I can go on, but that's a good place to end right there. Thank you.
Program, and that is the Land Use Division. I'm going to ask Katia Balaciano, who you are very familiar with, to summarize this slide.
Good afternoon, folks. Katia Balaciano. I'm joined today by Aaron Setagawa and Brandon Sue of the Land Use Division. There are 4 other folks who are part of the Land Use Division. You usually see me at meetings along with our Attorney General, Allison Cato. So we provide assistance at the Land Use Commission meetings. We're a required party. We'll get into that a little later. However, what we also do is provide comments on just about every special permit that the counties process, every zoning decision they make, every district boundary amendment they process. So we get a lot of these requests and usually respond in writing to them with, you know, what the law is or what the state's interests and opinions are. We had also shared with you the fact that we're working on a soil study and had summarized some of the findings for you. We look to protecting ag lands and reducing regulatory barriers and making best use of the state lands in the urban district near bus and rail. We are very much interested in supporting housing opportunities for local families. Later, I will speak in greater detail about the Housing and Urban Development Pro Housing Award that we had received a number of months ago. We have also, back in 2022, completed the state land use review of districts study that is the basis for legislation and also policy. We could go to the next slide, please. Within the land use division, there is also the transit-oriented development branch. We recently hired Seiji Ogawa to be the program manager of that branch. Brandon Sue is the lead on the East Kapolei Infrastructure Master Plan. We've hired Jacobs to take a look at the state properties around the 3 rail stations in East Kapolei. We received money from the legislature to look at that. So those are all urban lands, and the question is how to provide infrastructure in a timely manner and coordinate the needs of our sister state agencies. So that's a big project that we've got going on right now. And you will regularly hear, you spoke this morning about YIMBY. One of the biggest things that stands in the way of housing production is infrastructure. So with the TOD branch, we spend time looking at how to best fund and finance the necessary infrastructure, especially along rail and bus mobility hubs on the other islands. We're hoping to update the state's strategic plan for TOD in the next coming years and, you know, regularly just work to think about how best to use primarily the state's land to create compact mixed use developments in places where people can you know, walk to work, use transit, live in a more dense manner, keep the country, and promote infill development where it should be and where it can be best serviced. Next slide.
Oh, any questions?
Oh.
I just have a really quick question. Are you receiving additional funding for all your studies, and is the legislature supporting your studies?
When there's a bill that asks us to do something that's beyond our staff yes, we ask for funds, and sometimes we get them and sometimes we don't. But we understand that when we may need vendor help to take on a fairly complex, project, that we're going to need to ask for additional funds. Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, and I just noticed that they were shut down several bills last session pertaining to housing studies, like SB 140 and stuff was getting all the way through. So I was just curious if you did actually receive some additional funding.
Well, I think we should probably say a little bit more about the pro-housing grant that the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development received from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. This is a program that Senator Brian Schatz ponchoed it in the U.S. Senate. And it passed and it was signed into law. And there were 21 awardees throughout the country, and Hawaii was one of them. And we are charged with finding ways to finance infrastructure that will lead to housing, that will unlock housing, and also looking at the regulatory barriers to housing. This is a 6-year grant, so we may not have reports for you, immediately, but if the commission wants to get reports on our progress there, we'd be very happy to provide that.
Okay, thank you.
Our next
question.
Yeah, a couple people. I got a question myself. Who was that just asked for a question? Commissioner
That was
Wu?
me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I would love to keep abreast of that pro-housing plan and whether it be finding the finance for infrastructure or finding the barriers that hinder housing. I definitely want keep us posted. I would love it.
Will do, Commissioner.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was going to ask for too, in terms of regulatory barriers and/or the former, which is kind of my pet peeve, looking at barriers to housing, which is the infrastructure requirements. So is there anything I know you're early in the study work, but it's not a topic that's new. It's been around for a while. Can you add anything, or any of your members of your panel there add anything in terms of the barriers to housing that, from a planning perspective, from a whatever perspective you want to put, that tie directly to this state's approach, policy, whatever, for the requirements for infrastructure being put on the backs of developers?
I'm going to ask Katya to comment because she was involved in writing the grant and setting out the scope of work for this project.
The basis of the grant was a study that we completed in 2022 involving TOD infrastructure funding and financing. And I can send a link to the executive officer who could share that with you folks. That has resulted in several pieces of legislation involving conveyance taxes, GET, tax increment financing, and several recommendations for counties to better fund and finance infrastructure. So the pro-housing application came out of that study. We don't get enough money from the legislature, so we are now pursuing grants to help subsidize what needs to be done. And so we're going to be hiring probably 2 staff people. As Mary Alice said, it's a grant for 6 years. We've recently applied for a second round of grant funding, so that will be another 6 years. And the staff will specifically be tasked to working with counties to identify how best to streamline regulations that results in the production of primarily affordable housing. And again, our primary focus is honestly infill around either rail stations or near bus mobility hubs on the other islands. However, we understand that there's a need for a diverse amount of housing island-wide, and the staff will be able to do that. We're also funding 3 specific projects. One involves wastewater in Lehui. Another one involves Kahikili Terraces in Maui. how to best redevelop that property for more housing on that site for HPHA. And the third one involves HHFDC and Kamakana villages on the Big Island, and how we could best assist with pushing their infrastructure needs ahead so that we can see finally build out of that property.
So thank you, Katya. Let me give you a follow-up question. Do you sense that there's any political will in this state to deal with property taxes to raise funds for counties so that they could actually develop some of the needed infrastructure for new development as opposed to putting it all on the developer's back? Or are you purely looking at trying to optimize the existing process without more money coming into the process through property taxes?
Optimizing the existing process is the most affordable way to go. I don't think that people are interested in raising taxes, but there may be an opportunity to restructure how taxes are collected so that there may be ways to fund other things. We are definitely supportive of existing capital improvement program processes and working with counties to anticipate infrastructure needs. There was one other piece to that question.
No, I think you covered it. I mean, my basic issue is that the infrastructure requirements for a new multi-unit development is putting numbers I'm hearing $250,000 to $300,000 per unit cost just for the infrastructure that's required up front, which is now driving that to an unaffordable level for a lot of our fellow people in Hawaii. And until we solve that problem, I don't think we're going to get very far. That's just my opinion.
Chair, there was one other piece to your question, and that involved the degree to which developers have to pay for their own infrastructure for projects. And I believe the sentiment is moving in the direction of municipal and state and regional solutions, such that it's not the burden of each individual property owner or developer to have to fund all of the infrastructure that's necessary, especially when that infrastructure benefits probably a larger area. So I do think things are moving in that direction, and our East Kapolei infrastructure master plan effort is an example of how the legislature is looking at a regional solution.
Agreed with that approach. You still got to fund it, and that comes from property taxes, and I don't see the political will yet. So hopefully we'll see it.
Chair, can we move on to our next program?
Yes, please. Sorry.
Okay. The next program is our geospatial information systems, and I don't believe Art's here. Art Buto is the lead of that. This is an amazing program. It supports data-driven decision-making by entities all across the state, because when you can visualize data in layers in map form, you can often see patterns that if you just looked at a table, you wouldn't necessarily see them, or it might take longer. So we've been encouraging state planners and asset managers and everyone else to use geospatial mapping tools, and this program supports that. So it's an amazing program that's been around for a while, but it keeps keeping up with the changing ways of looking at data to make good decisions. Let's see if I missed anything. Any questions on our geospatial information systems program? Not seeing, Chair, I'd like to move forward then to the special plans branch. We have a representative. No. So if you look at the slide, this branch it has been around since 1987, but, sometimes is small, like as many as 2 people, and sometimes a little larger. Right now, it is 100% federally funded. And it has been working on the Hawaii Economic Recovery and Resilience Project using a big grant from the federal government to provide a plan for economic recovery from the COVID pandemic and then the Maui wildfires emergency. We have submitted almost all of the required documents for the Economic Development District designation by the U.S. Department of Commerce. That'll open up eligibility for government agencies, that would include county agencies and state and nonprofits, to pursue funding for economic development programs. And let's see what we'll be. We're also working on one that's, I think, may help with infrastructure, commissioners. And that is the Military and Community Relations Office, also known as MACRO. This is a federally funded project from out of the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation, which is part of the federal DoD, Department of Defense. And the goal there is, our role of this office is to create a repeatable planning process to identify infrastructure projects that will benefit both our military installations and, more importantly for us, their adjacent communities. So when we can identify those projects, then we can ask DoD for funding, not state funding, but federal funding. And that will help, I think, fill in some gaps where we need infrastructure. And I think now we're ready for our statewide sustainability branch. Danielle Bass is our state sustainability coordinator, and she will describe the program.
Aloha, good afternoon. Again, my name is Danielle, and as the administrator of the statewide sustainability branch, our primary purpose and roles and responsibilities are to evaluate and recommend legislative, regulatory, and policy changes to the governor, the legislature, the government agencies, private entities, non-governmental entities, and counties to encourage actions that best sustain, protect, and enhance Hawaii's environment, economy, and community for the long-term benefits of its people. Our current priorities, we are, of course, we are mandated to coordinate the Hawaii 2050 Sustainability Plan, which was amended in 2019 and published in 2021 as the State Climate and Sustainability Plan. So this is found in the Hawaii State Planning Act. We are also required to coordinate statewide climate and sustainability statutory goals. So those are the 26 mandates and targets that are scattered throughout all of the HRS, and we work with departments and agencies in terms of their progress to meeting the statutory goals. Targets. We also provide planning and actionable policy recommendations and assistance regarding climate change and sustainability to state, county, private, and NGO entities. That is described again in OPSD statutes. And our top priority is to expand staff capacity to strengthen statewide climate and sustainability engagement policy development and climate adaptation efforts. This is because at this time, while the statewide sustainability branch was created in 2020 via Act 45, prior to OPSD's merger, if you will, the state hasn't been funding the state sustainability branch to perform its climate and sustainability requirements and mandates. So right now at this point, I am the only staff person for this branch, regardless of the large statewide mandates. And I have worked very diligently with all of our departments and agencies to help them along, but acknowledging that it is only one staff entity. That being said, for future priorities, definitely it is a major goal to create a statewide administered dashboard to determine how the state of Hawaii is in achieving these sustainability and climate targets that are mandated within HRS, as well as to also develop Hawaii's first statewide climate adaptation and resilience plan. This is a major recommendation that we heard from the public in terms of our listening sessions to create the Hawaii 2050 sustainability plan as the climate plan, is that we actually need an adaptation strategy, which is inclusive, in inland areas that pertain to all climate risks. So this is what we have been recommended. I believe it may be in the admin package. If there aren't any questions, we can proceed.
Any questions? We'll move on. There's one. So this is.
Ms. Evans, have we gone quiet for some reason, or is it, what's going
My
on?
fault. Sorry, Chair, I forgot to push the button on the, you hear me now?
I hear you now. Thank you.
I was just explaining that we have a small component of 3 admin staff that support these 6 programs. And one of them, Dan Yashima, our accountant 4, does support the Land Use Commission staff when there's a fiscal transaction that needs to be processed. And now, unless you want a break, we're ready to start the second phase of our presentation, which is to focus in specifically on how we support the Land Use Commission. Commissioner?
Please proceed. Yeah. I think if commissioners need to make a bio break, they'll do that on their own. Please proceed.
Commissioner Carr Smith has a comment.
Please, Commissioner Carr Smith, yeah.
Thank you. You just said something about when there's a fiscal transaction with the LUC. Can you give us an example of what that is? Not specifically for the Land Use Commission, but our accountant 4 is our primary point of contact with the DBED, Administrative Services Officer, which oversees the DBED Fiscal Officer, the DBED Budget Analyst, and our DBED also, I think, has several account clerks. So it's in a, for attached agencies to a department, we have a central hub in the department that handles all of our fiscal transactions and works directly with the budget and finance and DAGs on those various fiscal transactions. So our point of contact for that is our accountant 4. Commissioner? Yes, Otter.
Yeah, thank you. I've been kind of hearing some chatter going around, and so I was just curious if OPSD had a position, but I believe the Senate is tossing around the idea, as you brought up, infill and housing. They're tossing around the idea of proposing to, I guess, somehow change the regulations or requirements and talking about tiny homes. Does OPSD have a position?
We support increasing housing for our local families in any way that we can. But specifically tiny homes, I don't think we have looked at that. That one, we support Governor Green's Kauhali proposals, where he has established Kauhalis for homeless populations, different types with different needs. That was Katya would like to answer. Go ahead, Katya.
We're going to be looking at that thing through the pro housing grant. We are definitely in support of accessory dwelling units. And all of the counties already allow accessory dwelling units. But what we would like to add to that is the development of blueprints that property owners can use. So off-the-shelf approved blueprints that have been already approved by the building departments of the various counties in order to save a little bit of money for the property owners and expedite the development of these ADUs or accessory dwelling units. It's kind of like a tiny home.
Any other questions, commissioners, before we go on to our next bit?
Please proceed. Make sure the mic's turned on.
Sorry, yes, it's on now. Thank you, Chair. So we're going to go ahead and do now into the areas where the commission, we support the commission and we present material to you. And in summary, those are going to be district boundary amendments, including status reviews, important agricultural lands, special permits and declaratory orders, frequent issues. Thank you, Ariana. And future matters of interest. And I think we will get to, in that future matter of interest, some of the legislation that we have proposed, but has not been decided upon by the administration. So on the budget schedule, we've been told by DBED that BNF has not made their recommendations on the budget items that we've requested yet, but that they expect that there will be an appeal process. So if Budget and Finance recommends no on our, which is very frequent on our budget request, then our director, Jimmy Tokioka, will have an opportunity to appeal some of those turn downs. That's a usual part of the process. In November, probably by maybe starting on November 15th. And so this would be usually focusing on new items. So what Dan Ordenker was describing to you is what's called the base budget. It's the budget that's already been passed in years, it's been included in years past. And so therefore, generally, those are not subject to the same kind of scrutiny and negative recommendations and then appeals. The budget is usually finalized around December 1st by the governor because it is by law has to be sent to the legislature on December 15th. So that is the usual annual cycle. It doesn't, but as Dan said, we haven't gotten the actual information yet. It'll flow from BNF down to our department, DBED, and then it'll flow to the programs. Okay, we're going to start with district boundary amendments, and I'm going to ask Katya to talk a little bit support on that.
I have a mic over here. Thank you.
But it's not on.
I think it is on.
It's on.
Yeah.
These are the old broken mics. Forgive me.
Yeah. Red means go.
Sorry.
Okay.
So OPSD is a mandatory formal party to DBA hearings, and you see the testimony that we submit for your review prior to the meetings, and we discuss it during the meetings. So what happens to create that testimony, I'm just going to describe a little kind of what happens behind the scenes. So when we get the application from the LUC staff, we take a look at it. If we have questions about the application, we will contact the petitioner directly. Sometimes we will meet with the petitioner, get additional clarification as necessary. We may meet with the county to understand, the county's perspective and needs and issues. We will also ask our sister agencies for comments. So we send them the materials. We give them a deadline by which we're looking for comments. They will submit comments to us, or if they don't, we'll harass them until they do. And sometimes they don't. And so sometimes we need to come to the commission and we have to just honestly say, we tried to get comments and we didn't. But we're the ones who collect the comments. And if there's a need to reconcile competing interests, we will try to do that with the agencies. And if we cannot do that, it may be that a particular agency will come to you directly at a meeting to state what their position is. But otherwise, I believe that one of the reasons why OPSD is responsible for collecting this information is so that the state speaks with one voice, and OPSD is that single entity to represent the state's interests before the LUC. So one item that had come up a little while ago involving seaworm and the notion of an MOU. After that meeting, we understood, we heard the concerns, and we went to seaworm to understand what their needs were. And DLNR is a large organization, so it takes a while, as we understood it, for our request for comments to trickle down to seaworm. So we spoke with the leadership of seaworm, we spoke with the leadership of DLNR, and received approval so that now, as a result of these matters, we're going to be sending our request for comments to both DLNR and seaworm simultaneously. Seaworm will still draft their response and send it up through the DLNR channels so that, from a policy perspective, seaworm and DLNR speak with one voice. So we are able to try to find solutions that respect the processes of our sister agencies, but also try to get from them the comments that we're looking for. So we will then conduct our own analysis and evaluation, going sometimes to the source documents, so that we can draft and submit state's position and testimony. Internally, we have usually planners who take the lead on drafting that material. We have today both Aaron and Brandon who do a lot of that work. It comes up through me. I send it to Mary Alice. Our AG reviews the testimony so that what you're getting is a fairly polished document at the end of the day.
So Katya, let me thank you for expanding on that last point. That's progress, as I see it, and much appreciated for addressing a real issue in the process. And let me say that editorially, that water issues are paramount these days when it comes to district boundary amendments, considerations of IAL lands, special permits. Fortunately, the LUC hasn't had to deal with much of that in recent times, such that the problems we've had relative to water have not come before us. But getting our house in order so that we can accurately and promptly characterize the water issues is really important. So thank you for putting attention on that.
You're welcome.
I had a comment. Sorry.
Next slide. Thank you. Sorry.
Katya, I just wanted to applaud you for being proactive and finding a solution for the issue that some thought an MOU was required for, and you just talked to the people and made it happen. And thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. Moving on to the next slide. So number 7, yeah, There, yep, there. So OPSD will consider whether there's a factual basis in the record to demonstrate a nexus between state interest and the condition. So, we ask, is there a relationship, between what is being requested and what is being mitigated? So conditions are definitely intended to mitigate impacts. So for example, if there is a large development in front of you and they are anticipating, X number of units and therefore Y number of children, then we have to ask ourselves, does DOE, Department of Education, need 1 or 2 classrooms, or do they need an entire school? So there's a proportional matter as well. So not only is there a relationship, there's a housing development, there are going to be children, therefore it's appropriate probably to ask for assistance with the creation of a school, but then we look at it from a proportional perspective and ask whether a whole school is necessary or is it just a number of classrooms. So that's the kind of work that we do behind the scenes. Next slide, please. At the meeting, you will see we identify and present state documents and witnesses. We'll cross-examine witnesses, present arguments and recommendations, answers and questions. In the 2 years that I've been here, I have not seen a district boundary amendment. So, this is what we do, but we haven't had to do that recently. Over the past 2 years, it's been primarily responding to status reports, special permits, those kinds of things. And then when it comes to a decision and order, if there's an agreement, then we will review the DNO. And as you saw this morning, we will usually agree, or if we're not in agreement, we'll let you know, or if it comes to it, we will draft the DNO, and that way you have 2 options to look at. Occasionally, we'll have conversations with petitioners behind the scenes, and we will stipulate if we can find a place of agreement, we'll submit those stipulations to you. You can accept them, you can reject them, but they show that we've done some work behind the scenes to try to find common ground. Next slide, please. In regards to post-hearing motions, we show up in front of you in regards to any motion to amend a petition, motion to consider, and order to show cause. These motions typically follow the DBA process, but they're more focused to that particular issue that's raised. Occasionally, we're going to ask extensions from you because there are 7-day deadlines in the admin rules, and in certain instances, we need to reach out to our sister agencies to get comments, in which case we'll often, ask for an extension. As I said, a lot of the requests that have come before you are in response to status reviews, annual reports that the LUC receives, and we will go through all of the annual reports. If there is an issue, we will bring it to the applicant or petitioner's attention, or we might bring it to your attention. But you have already been reaching out to property owners, developers, when there are annual reports that you've got questions about. When you send letters to these property owners and asking them to appear before you, we will usually just look at those items that you've called out. However, we've also seen how sometimes the questions from commissioners, goes beyond those items that your staff have identified. So now we're getting a little bit more into the habit of being prepared to look at the entire petition. But, that's kind of changed with, how the commission kind of the questions that you raise. So we're learning as we listen to you and need to adjust our ways. Now we're going to talk about important ag land designations. So this too has not come before you within the past 2 years, but there is a process for that, and I'm going to ask Brandon Sue of the Land Use Division to talk with you about how that goes.
Thank you, Katya. You might be a little familiar from Maui, the situation going on in Maui for IAL, but the IAL, I'll just talk briefly about OPSD's role in IAL petitions. The IAL framework gives LUC responsibility for designating IAL lands. And it establishes 2 types of IAL petitions. One is landowner initiated, the other is county initiated. For landowner petitions, OPSC is not a mandatory party, but we will usually submit public testimony and appear at the hearing. And these are subject to the declaratory order process, and Aaron will talk about that in the next slide. For county petitions, the counties are required to consult us, OPSD, when creating their maps to ensure that state goals are, the designation aligns with state goals. And when the petition is before the LUC, OPSD will be made available for consultation. But generally, OPSD's role in IL petitions includes, we review the petition and supporting documents. We'll discuss issues with the petitioner and solicit comments from our sister agencies, mainly Department of Agriculture. And typically DOA will provide its own public testimony for IAL, and usually we'll show up, but if they don't, then we'll include that testimony in OPSD's comments. And we conduct our own analysis and evaluation. We evaluate the petition based on the 8 criteria established in HRS 205-44 and HAR. And we'll give particular attention to whether the land is currently used for ag production, its ALISH and LSB classifications, whether land has sufficient quantities of water, and whether IL designation is consistent with the county's general plan and community development plans. And finally, OPSD will draft and submit our comments to the LUC and appear at LUC hearings. Okay, next slide.
Aaron Setagawa is going to speak with you about how we handle special permits and declaratory orders.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Basically, 205-6A requires that all special permits have to go to OPSD, the LUC, and the Department of Ag for review and comment. And all special permits originate at the county level, whether it's less than 15 acres or more. If it's the special permit involves more than 15 acres, it has to be approved both by the county and this body. And if so when OPSD reviews these applications for special permits, we refer to the the 5 special permit guidelines that help you to determine whether the use is unusual and reasonable, which would be allowed in the special permit, and an otherwise unpermitted use. If we want to be a party to these, because we're not a mandated party, but we can request to be a party at the county level, and that if we wanted to be a party, it has to be at the county level in order for it to carry through to this body. There's also been occasions when the special permit was less than 15 acres that we felt there was a major state concern that we asked the county to make us parties at the planning commission level. permits, I think you're pretty familiar with most of how the special permits are handled at the LUC level. But we also review special permits less than 15 acres when they go for the county. And some of the things we look at, for example, is we look at the acreage involved. It has to be less than 15 acres. And what we look at is not just the parcel size, but the actual amount of land that's used for the use that's involved. So which in some cases may be less. If the parcel may be larger than 15 acres, but the actual use could be, 6, 7 acres or less than 15. When it comes to things such as bed and breakfast, transient, vacation rentals, or short-term rentals, we look at, for example, if it's an existing dwelling or if it's a minor addition, if the applicant includes a farm plan, which is verified, or if there's existing agriculture on the site, we generally don't comment on those permits. We leave that to the counties to decide. However, if it involves other commercial uses, for example, weddings, retreats, special events, or if there are multiple dwellings involved, we'll take a closer look at it. We're probably likely to provide some comments. If there are commercial or agricultural uses being asked for in the special permit in the agricultural district, we're going to comment depending on the use, the scale, and what impacts we see. If there's a quarry or landfill involved, typically we will comment, especially regarding mitigation measures. And we'll also, of course, assess the use according to the 5 special permit guidelines. Lastly, excuse me, many special permits also involve time extensions. In general, we allow the counties to determine if the extension is warranted unless we see additional impact. That's pretty much how we handle special permits in our review. Regarding declaratory orders, again, as Brandon said, OPSC is not a party, but we do provide public testimony. However, if the commission decides that the case requires a contested case hearing, then under the contested case process, we are allowed to ask to intervene if we so desire. That's pretty much all I have to say, unless there's any questions.
Turn off the mute. Can't hear anybody.
Okay, can you hear me now, Chair?
I do. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. We're moving on to our frequent issues slide. And this is where we want to share our philosophy. We try to balance the various competing interests. And we're working with that with the Deputy Director of DBED, Dane Wicker now, who has a informal working group within the department on and involving the Department of Agriculture on looking at what principles might be appropriate for balancing renewable energy, agriculture and food production, and housing in the Ag District. Now, this is not any formal proposal to the Land Use Commission. This is an internal working group that the Deputy Director convened. And it doesn't have a clear endpoint at this point, but I think he's looking for guidance and trying to see if there's a consensus that would be helpful to the Land Use Commission in looking at when you get proposals for siting solar energy arrays in the Ag District, for instance, when you see district boundary amendments for housing, is that in the right place? Is it in, or is it, should those be located in areas that are not necessarily top priority for agriculture or food production? This is going to be a continuing
challenge for Hawaii, that finding that balance, because almost half of the state is in the state ag district, as you're aware. And now that we no longer have plantation agriculture, we have very few farmers, and most of them are small farmers now. Many of them are family farms that use family labor, they're not commercial in that general sense, although they may sell to farmers markets or to local grocery stores if they meet the federal food and safety requirements, which are costly and challenging for small farmers. Agriculture, as you know, has a huge challenge now, and it's one that we feel very committed to trying to help support, but we also recognize those competing needs for the ag district lands, some of which are not deemed as priority for agriculture. Some are D&E in some soil systems, some are other in others. Some of those others are very valuable for certain niche crops, but that's one of those issues.
Tom is no longer here to talk about 343, but you heard extensively from him earlier. Basically, the idea is that it's an environmental disclosure process. It's not a regulatory process. There were issues that came up fairly regularly regarding 343 and whether the document, the disclosure document, was stale or not stale. How old was it? Was it needed? What was the status of it? So you will get the petitioner's perspective on that. But because that program exists within OPSD, we too are experts on that matter. And should any questions come up regarding 343 and satisfaction of those regulations, you are certainly free to ask during commission meetings regarding that matter. We're now going to speak a little about Kapa'akai. It is a matter that we always look for when reviewing a petition and drafting testimony. Aaron?
Thank you. The requirement for a Kapa'akai analysis, as you probably know, arose from a Supreme Court decision based on a Land Use Commission case. However, because the issue arises on Article 12, Section 7 of the Hawaii State Constitution, which protects the reasonable exercise of customary and traditional exercise Native Hawaiian rights. We believe it applies to every state and county government body that is making a discretionary, issues discretionary approval. And certainly if it's a district boundary amendment or a special permit over 15 acres, the applicant or petitioner needs to conduct a full-scale analysis, usually involving a cultural impact analysis. And I think you've seen some of those multi-page reports. I think the tricky point comes into when you deal with special permits less than 15 acres. And so what scale are we looking at? For example, Kapa'akai analysis is required no matter what. But the question is at what scale, what level of detail. We looked at the size of the project, whether it's just dealing with existing buildings or if there's new construction. For example, if you're talking about a bed and breakfast in a one bedroom in an existing dwelling, it would be onerous on the landlord to require them to hire a consultant to do a full-scale CIA. So typically what the owner will do, because they know they have to fulfill this requirement, is they will put together a narrative of whether or not, how long they've been there, what they've witnessed, whether or not they know of any evidence. And typically they'll say that if anyone comes forward, they will, certainly allow the practitioner to access to the property. We like to also see at least some consultation with Native Hawaiian organizations in the area, the Ahumoku body or other organizations. So there's more than just, well, my opinion. And that's basically how we look at it.
Thank you, Aaron. In regards to reconciling competing agency interests, I think you heard me speak a little earlier about that. When we get different recommendations from our sister agencies, we will meet with them to better understand their needs and try to find solutions that bridge gaps. Sometimes that's possible, sometimes that's not possible, in which case, if it's not possible, they will come to you at a meeting and share with you their concerns and interests. Mary Alice.
I think this bullet point speaks to the earlier one about balancing. And that is that we look at, we try to look at OPSD, we look at things from a broader perspective, whether it's because the Hawaii State Plan charges us with looking at the economic impacts, protection of natural resources, social justice issues, and of course, we try to ensure that there's a healthy economy. So when we look at land use issues, we're also looking at those other issues and the other impacts they might have. And that leads us to our last bullet point, which I think we can.
Well, Brandon was going to speak with you a little about that. Brandon comes to us actually from the City and County of Honolulu's Department of Planning and Permitting. And he, in the capacity as planner there, he not only led the updating of a development plan, not the general plan, but one of the development plans on the North Shore, but he also participated in the updating of a number of development plans. So he brings to us that expertise. Brandon?
Oh, thanks, Chuck. Yeah, like Katya mentioned, I came from a long-range planning perspective, community planning perspective, and I know how much work goes into these plans. They're often generational, and it includes hours of debating in school cafeterias late at night, and real, on the ground community planning work. So we take that into account, and one of the frequent issues is how do we allow the counties, these regional communities, to implement their own plans, right? Plans that they take ownership in and have spent a long time thinking about. So for that reason, OPSD gives a lot of weight to the general and development plans in our review of land use approvals and just legislation in general.
Thank you, Brandon. Next and last slide.
Okay. So thank you for being so patient with us. We would like to go over 3 areas. And I think one of them, the pro-housing grant, we've actually covered pretty well. And I did mention that the legislature passed a law that requires us to update the Hawaii State Planning Act, Chapter 226. That chapter it's an amazing chapter. It includes just about every possible goal that 50 years at least worth of brilliant people have put together. But it is, I find, it's needs updating. It still reflects back on some of the pineapple and sugar goals of the state. And so over the next 2 years, we're going to go out for procurement and hire a vendor and work on as much community engagement as we possibly can with the funds that the legislature gave us, which was I think we got 300,000 to do this over 2 years. It's not a lot, but I think it'll allow for quite a lot of community engagement. Want to hear from people, different stakeholders, what they think may have changed that needs to be reflected in our Hawaii State Plan. By the way, the Hawaii State Plan, according to the Attorney General, it's not a self-enforcing statute. That means that it has competing goals and targets and priorities, such that you couldn't do it all, without. So that means that if you were concerned about a particular goal in there and you felt that it wasn't being done, you couldn't use Chapter 226 to sue the state and say, you didn't do it. That would take a different type of legislation. So I'd like to, you've got those maps up there. And you heard us say that we did in 2022 a review of districts. And so we completed that, submitted it to the Land Use Commission, the governor, and the legislature, gave them copies of this. And we have drafted a bill that has been submitted through DBED for AG's review and will be going to the governor. And we don't know what the governor will decide. Governors have until the day of the state, which is usually the Monday after the opening of the legislature. So from my experience, governors can come up with ideas for their bill package all the way up until the night before and expect somebody to stay up until 2 a.m. drafting and then AG to stay up and marking them up. But so we won't have certainty necessarily on whether this bill will be part of the governor's package, but I wanted to present the concept to you using the maps so that you have an idea of what we're going to be, if we have an opportunity, the governor agrees, we're going to be presenting to the legislature. Now, that doesn't mean the legislature will agree with us at all, but as you look at the maps of the islands, you'll see those little red areas. Those are the areas for urban growth, future urban growth that the county's general plans and development plans, which Brandon, shared with you. Those red dots have gone through community meetings, a whole generation, Brandon?
So Mary Alice, this is Dan. I just want to interrupt you for a second and give my fellow commissioners, if any of you need to leave for a flight, don't feel bad, please leave to make your flight. But Mary Alice, please continue until your logical conclusion, and those of us that can stay with you will stay with you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. So those red dots are the ones that the county's planning commissions and county councils have voted on to accept as part of their general and development plans for future urban growth. And I want you to note that they are mostly either adjacent to or in some cases surrounded on 3 sides by the state urban district. And they are not extensive. And which tells you, how conservative planning commissions, communities, and their county councils are in looking at what their needs for future urban growth are on their islands. So a bill that we have submitted for consideration would allow the counties to do district boundary amendments proceedings for these areas. And some of them are going to be larger than 15 acres. Although as you look at them, you'll see none of them are very large. And so that we'll see how that fares. But this was part of a finding that came out of our district boundary review. And we are hopeful that it will help unlock infrastructure, that will unlock housing and additional communities. And the ultimate goal is keeping our local families here, reducing the cost of housing for them, and being able to keep families intact.
Mary Alice, this is Commissioner Lee. I have a question. If this bill does become part of the governor's package and it is presented to the legislature, do you think they would be interested in what this commission's position might be on that?
Very definitely. I think they would. I want to tell you my perspective though. This is a very conservative approach. Legislators have submitted bills that would have increased the county's ability to do DBAs to 25 acres, 50 acres. 1 year it was 100 acres, and none of those bills passed. And I think the reason might be that that didn't tie the counties to a long process of careful review. And it could have allowed a county to put an urban district boundary sort of out in the middle of, the gray areas. This one, I think, because it has behind it, up to 10 years of community input and decision-making, I think they may view it, as I do, as a conservative move that will support housing.
Yeah, I think this is a really sensitive and creative approach. And I think that we should look into this more and maybe perhaps take a position. But thank you. Thank you for this.
Commissioner, I'll offer to let your executive director know if it becomes part of the governor's package. Chair, this ends our presentation.
Mary Alice, if there were just a few other bills
Okay.
that were listed here, and just to bring to your attention, just very quickly, because I know that we've spent a lot of time here already. We worked with your staff to identify the need for the updating and mapping of state land use districts. We're going to be requesting $200,000. I think it's $200,000 for the, Brandon, I'm looking in your direction. I can't remember how much it was. But anyway, we're asking for money to update those maps and digitize them. We're also submitting, as we have the year before, changes to 205 involving the IAL incentives that would allow farm worker housing in the form of clusters and clarifying who may live in such housing. We're also trying to move ahead with the soils project, phase 2. We're asking for money to find a way to take that project ahead. We understand that there the soils, the LSP system that we currently use hasn't been updated in a long time. We'd like to link it to the federal system that exists, create a model that can be used while maintaining the LSP system. And we're also asking for money for an integrated land use study that takes a closer look at housing, energy, and agricultural needs. So that is our package of legislation that you may be interested in. We also have 3 additional bills for infrastructure financing, all 3 of which we had submitted last year and were not adopted. So that is our package of legislation. We're not sure where it stands in regards to DBED and whether DBED will be submitting it to the governor and whether the governor includes it, but that's where we are today. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions, comments, concerns?
I have a couple of questions.
Mr. Kahele.
Okay, Commissioner here. Earlier you mentioned about the Hawaiʻi homes. Are you still looking at those homes being built on the west side? And I apologize, guys. You know me, I'm always out there on the west side trying to help out people. I was struggling families living on the beaches. living in the bushes. I believe Mr. Wu brought up about affordable housing, trying to keep the native Hawaiians here in Hawaii. We average about 15,000 of us native Hawaiians and locals that's leaving here and moving up to the mainland. So going back to the Kauhali homes, there is land on the leeward side of the island that we can use to build these homes that's owned by the state, and nobody's making an attempt to try to see what we can do to try to meet with people, our leaders in there, in Waianae, to try to see what we can do to get whatever permits we need to build these homes. I know they looked at, I believe, Hawaii AIDS homes. This company that supplies these homemades. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm not sure what's your role or OPSC's role in trying to see what you can do to meet with Mr. Mizuno, our homelessness star. Is that a good name for him?
No.
Okay. So the governor calls him so anyway, that's one concern that I have. See if we can do, what we can do to meet with our leaders on the west side and meet with our representatives and see what we can do to try to build these homes on state-owned land in the Mahi area. In addition, I had another question. The homes that you're building in that maps that you had, the urban growth areas, are we looking at building affordable homes or market value homes? And if it's going to be affordable, what's going to be the qualification? What's going to be the AMI? 30%, 80%, 100%? Us locals, construction workers, we're struggling to even qualify for 60%. We are seasonal workers. We work when it doesn't rain. Maybe for some other trades, they work indoors. We work when it doesn't rain. We work with the project continues. So, we struggle out there. We may be lucky to qualify for 60% AMI. What's going to be the cost of these urban growth homes that you're looking at building in these areas over here?
Well, let me talk about the Kauhali initiative first. That is Governor Green's initiative. Yeah. And when Governor Green, so I'm a governor appointee, and Governor Green can give the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development direct assignments to help, as he did when he named the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development to be one of the 4 agencies on his removing barriers to housing initiative under his emergency proclamation for first housing and then affordable housing. So when we get an assignment from the governor's office to support one of his initiatives, we do our very best within our staffing constraints to support that. And I think both Dan and I were in the Ige administration, were asked to comment on Governor Ige's homeless emergency proclamation. And we expressed our comments, right? We gave them our best wisdom on that. And it has, actually, that initiative has resulted in Twinkle Borges Pu'ahonua in Waianae. So, we try to play a positive role when we're asked. On the urban growth, future urban growth areas that the counties have adopted, if the legislature sees fit to pass something similar to what we're proposing, then it would be up to the counties to use their zoning powers. They all have some affordable requirements that are on the developer to usually 20% affordable. If a developer wants to do a 51% or more affordable project, and as you know, as a former member of the Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation, Commissioner Kahele, then there will be state subsidies that can bring that affordable level up to over 50%. And that helps a lot, but it also adds some strings to the projects and takes a special kind of developer to put a financing stack together for one of those. But the counties do support that, and so does our sister state agency, Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation.
Thank you. I was, that's my concern. We're always out there in the communities. I got grandkids, grandsons moved out to the mainland, for living here. So the highest cost for all of us is housing. So you know that you've been in the business so many years. So that's my concern. Everybody's worried about keeping their family members here. We're looking at trying to keep housing costs down. So, and of course, in addition, we're also trying to help the people out there struggling. People out there living in the bushes, living in the beaches. So if we can get people out there on the Waianae coast and meet with these leaders from the Waianae Kupuna Council, I believe you've heard of them. They're very active out there and trying to find land. They may have found a couple locations that's owned by the state, but for some reason the state came out with some excuse about the infrastructure wasn't there. There's no infrastructure there on the beaches. So people just want to move to a location so they don't have to get kicked out off the beaches every few months. So I just wanted to express my concern. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other commissioners, comments, questions for OPSD? So Mary Alice, who's that?
Nancy.
Commissioner Corsmith.
Thank you. I was just curious about the 205-18, that periodic review of districts. Is that part of the last topics that you were talking about?
Yes.
And your review of the counties and the mapping and all that, is that part of that? Okay.
Yes.
And that's what you work with LUC staff on as well. Is that correct or not?
No, I don't think we did, but Aaron Sitagawa, who's here, was the primary author. And we did get information from the Land Use Commission, of course. So this one, it used to be known as the 5-year boundary review. It started out as a Land Use Commission statutory obligation. And then I think somewhere around 1992, Dan, do you remember? The legislature switched it to the Office of Planning, which at that point it was 5 years old. And the Office of Planning, State Planning then, did propose a number of, so the Office of State Planning does have the statutory authority to initiate district boundary amendment petitions. However, we've never had the money to do all the studies and requirements that a petition requires. So, and we still don't. As much as, we might want to, see that role be a possibility for the state, if we don't have funds to hire consultants to do all the studies, we wouldn't be able to do it. I don't want to raise that expectation. I want to lower that one. But we did a number of petitions that didn't in 92, 93, and to the commission, and some of them were approved. Some of them were moving ag lands to conservation. Some of them were moving a few small parcels. That was the easier lift, was moving ag lands to conservation. So there's some of those that were not, we didn't have the money to put into a formal petition, but the recommendations we have included in this report, bringing them forward. Some of them still may have merit. And then because this is no longer, by the way, when it was a 5-year boundary review, we still didn't have the money to do it. So we didn't do it until 2022. We asked the legislature to change it to a periodic review to reflect our lack of capacity to do this every 5 years, and bless their hearts, they did give us that flexibility. So I don't want you to think that we're going to provide the next 5-year update in 2027. We're not going to be able to do that, I don't think. But this does give us a lot to work on. Thank you.
Thank you all. You know, I find it kind of strange. I use the word strange, Ms. Evans, that the LUC and to some degree OPSD is criticized as a regulatory barrier to help solve our problems, in particular with housing and others. You know, we're sitting here, it's probably been, I don't know, a year and a half since we've seen a DBA or a SUP application or even an IAL application before the LUC. It's hard to be a barrier when you're not even given an opportunity to weigh in on a specific proposal. And I'm trying to kind of figure this out. I mean, what is the perception that you might have in terms of what regulatory barriers that we have or that we present to the general public or to developers when, you know, we really are obligated to honor the constitutional requirements that are involved in Kapaakai and 343 and other matters before us. So do you have a editorial comment on my concern?
Of course. I think all of the regulations that the Land Use Commission must comply with, court decisions, legislative laws, came from good intentions and community desires. And I think they have accumulated over the decades. I've worked for the state for 50 years, so I've seen a lot of it myself as a planner. And they have accumulated to the point where they're now, all of those good intentions, all of those things that communities and legislators and courts felt were necessary and important for our quality of life are now making it harder to do housing. And I think planners are part of that history. We have also supported those kinds of protective measures. So I think it's on us to look at ourselves and see what role we had, not you, but us, and see if there are ways that we can still meet some of those important goals and values, but maybe make it less costly and less time consuming to present proposals and get a decision, yes or no, on them. The other thing, Chair, that I've noticed is that as those regulations have accumulated, the terms and conditions in district boundary amendments have increased to the point you're now about at 33 terms and conditions in your DNOs. Is that about right, Dan? 20, 31, 30, something on average. Anyway, that often I think means that there's quite a lot of things that even a successful petitioner has to comply with. And so that's I think it's, I don't think Chair, I don't think this is something that anyone, ever intended to make it harder. I think everything has been done to protect something that we all value. But I think the cumulative effect is just made it harder for housing. And this is not unique to Hawaii. This is something that planners are looking at all across the country and finding that we have played a role in making it harder to produce housing.
I think on that point, that's a great spot to end our discussion and a very well phrased response to my question, Mary Alice. So thank you very much, because I think you've summed it up pretty well. So unless anybody has a final question, or Mary Alice, you or your team want to make a final comment, I'm going to bring this to a close. So I'll give you everybody a last opportunity.
Bruce, Commissioner Oʻahu has his hand raised. Commissioner
Oʻahu, please speak.
Yeah, I just want to add to that comment. So here on Maui, most, I mean, I guess when the process is long and cumbersome and costly, like for Maui, when a lot of the, we had 2 or 3 builders of housing on Maui, affordable housing. Spencer left, he was the biggest. Even at one time, Hawaiian Homes wasn't received here, and they will go to the areas where it was less, I guess, more welcoming, I should say. But when I talk to people and I encourage them to come before LUC, the first thing they say is, once they hear that you got to go through the LUC process, they don't want to even fill out an application. So everyone on Maui was looking for lands that were zoned under the 15 acres. And we have run out of those. I call those infill, right? So everybody's scratching around. If they wanted to build housing, they were looking for the properly zoned ones. And again, under the acreage of 15 acres. At the same time, there's utilizing the 2-1-H process to make it happen. In other words, to find a fast tracking solution. And I always thought that we should have fixed the solution instead of offering a 2-1-H, which what it does, it exempts the process of what's been created over the course of time. So we on Band-Aid fix on a bigger issue that we're looking at to hit projections or numbers that kind of take away from its natural course. Hence 2-1-H for Maui, that was 2.96. And I just gonna let you guys, I'm gonna end up with this about the regulations. We had 2.96, I think it came out in 2002. In 9 years, we built 8 homes. Sometimes when you get non-experts making the decision of housings and pretend that they do know, like I always say, we gotta get the facts to make the best decisions for us. We had non-experts waiting on housing that took Maui back for years. And we're in a spot of almost no return right now. So I guess what I'm saying is we need smart people who've done it before. I always say this, I'm a carpenter by trade. Ask me about carpenter questions. But if I was to testify and be an expert of an electrician, beware of me being an expert. I'll end it there. Aloha.
So I got one electrician problem in my house. You sure you cannot help?
I'm positive I'm not you guy. And see, that's the part we know. Like I know where I can fill in and do good. But if I overextend myself, which a lot of people do, that's the problem we get into. But I'd like to thank OSPD for you guys' efforts in doing this. I really appreciate you guys. I like that you guys looking for, I guess, the barriers. You're looking for financing. You're looking for zoning issues. And I would love to help in any way, or this board would love to help in any way to help you guys attain housing solutions. Aloha.
Aloha. Very good. Commissioners, anything further?
I have one quick comment, please, Chair.
Yeah.
I wanted to recognize Katya. I know that you're retiring soon. And it's been a pleasure working with you, and I wish you all the best going forward. And we have a little something for you.
Wow. That's wonderful.
It's very kind.
Katya, all the best in your international adventure.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not really retiring. I'm going to be doing other things, redirecting my energies.
Good luck. Good luck in your adventure. Commissioners, anything further? Hearing none. Thanks again, Mary Alice Evans, to you and your team. We appreciate you coming forward, spending time with us today. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.